Moving into the situation in the Middle East, as the Palestinian Foreign Ministry has urged for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to allow in aid, the Israeli army has pursued its airstrikes, killing at least 29 Palestinians. Scores of others have been injured in the Israeli bombardments, which targeted various parts of the enclave, notably refugee camps west of Gaza and Nusayrat, in the central part of the territory. Evoking the desperate situation prevailing in the Gaza Strip and the sufferings of the Palestinian population, the Palestine Mubashir channel's reporter Shadi El-Bez has more.
Dozens of martyrs continue to fall amid the situation, and the real human suffering that is devastating the citizens here in the Gaza Strip continues, of course, amid the lack of food and, of course, of the humanitarian aid that used to arrive from international organizations. They talked about bringing in trucks by international institutions, and we saw yesterday some international organizations distributing bags of flour to families. We are waiting for these bags of flour to reach all our people in all areas of the Gaza Strip, as we expected food parcels, but the number of trucks is too small to enable these international organizations to deliver this aid to the citizens.
This came as the UN warned that the lack of fuel in the Gaza Strip had reached a critical level, threatening to considerably exacerbate the sufferings of the Palestinian population. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry stressed that putting an immediate end to the Israeli acts of aggression on the Gaza Strip was the most appropriate and human response or human process to adopt to protect the Palestinian civilians and allowing of sufficient and sustained aid. It was quoted by the news agency Wafa saying that the mass crimes carried out by the Israeli occupying forces against the Palestinian population, mainly women, children and the elder, continue to raise the death toll and to destroy what is left of Gaza. The Palestinian Center for Human Rights has condemned in its strongest terms the U.S. sanctions imposed against Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. The details with Jamal Salmani.
The Palestinian Center for Human Rights has said the step is the latest in a long line of efforts by successive U.S. administrations to shield the Israeli occupation from accountability and comes only 1 month after the U.S. imposed sanctions on 4 judges of the International Criminal Court, 2 of whom had issued rulings in the situation in Palestine. It has said that these appalling sanctions, as it put it, constitute a punishment for Albanese. It has said that these appalling sanctions, as it put it, constitute a punishment for Albanese's relentless efforts in defending Palestinian rights and exposing the crimes committed by Israel's settlers' colonial regime, including her recent report to the UN Human Rights Council, which sheds light on the wide network of states and corporations involved in maintaining the regime and violating the rights of the Palestinian people. The spokesperson of the Office of the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani, has spoken to the press on UN rapporteurs and the challenges they face, including pushback, accusations of bias, and personal attacks. She stressed the importance of the rapporteurs being able to carry out their duties without fear of personal targeting or punishment.
On pushback, as you know, our office, the rapporteurs, are constantly facing pushback. We're accused of violating sovereignty, we're accused of bias, selectivity, false information, etc. There has been very misogynistic and toxic language used against rapporteurs in the past as well. As far as sanctions are concerned, indeed, to our knowledge as well, this is the first time that sanctions have been imposed. The impact that this has on their work, rapporteurs are constantly engaged with victims of human rights violations, and they need to be able to speak out, to give a voice to these victims. They need to be able to analyze the information and present it without fear that they will have to be personally targeted or punished as a result of their work. This has a real detrimental impact on their ability to do their work properly.
The American administration's decision to impose sanctions on UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese follows a U.S. campaign aimed at putting pressure and forcing the Geneva-based Human Rights Council to remove her from office, a campaign that ended in failure. The UN Secretary-General spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric has condemned the US decision, saying the US sanctions were unacceptable.
The imposition of sanctions on special rapporteurs is a dangerous precedent. Francesca Albanese, like all other special UN human rights rapporteurs, is an independent human rights expert appointed by the UN Human Rights Council and reporting to the UN Human Rights Council. Special rapporteurs do not report to the Secretary General. He has no authority over them or their work. That being said, member states are perfectly entitled to their views and to disagree with reports by special rapporteurs, but we encourage them to engage with the UN's human rights architecture. The use of unilateral sanctions against special rapporteurs or any other UN expert or official is unacceptable.
Francesca Albanese explained that those in power were trying to silence her because she spoke on behalf of those who have little or no power except to stand up and hope not to die, not to see their children massacred. She is responsible for investigating human rights violations in the Palestinian territories and has not hesitated to denounce what she has described as genocide perpetrated by the Israeli occupation army in Gaza.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that his country would agree to a resumption of nuclear talks with the United States only if its assurances were provided that no more attacks will target his country. The Foreign Minister said in a speech that the Tehran-based foreign diplomats that Iran has always been ready and will be ready in the future for talks about its nuclear program, but assurance should be provided that in case of resumption of talks, the trend will not lead to war. Araghchi said that under the Iranian law, the country will meet the International Atomic Energy Agency's request for cooperation case by case based on Iran's interests. He added that any inspection by the agency should be based on Iran's security concerns as well as the safety of the inspectors. The Sahrawi President and Secretary General of the Polisario Front, Mr. Brahim Ghali, has called on the United Nations to assume its responsibilities and honor its commitments to decolonization in Western Sahara by allowing the Sahrawi people to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination and independence. In a speech given at the opening of the 7th ordinary session of the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front, the Sahrawi president stressed that the UN must assume its responsibility to protect defenseless Sahrawi citizens in a region under its direct mandate, calling on the UN organization to honor its commitments to the decolonization of the last colony in Africa. He also called for an end to the policies of the Moroccan occupier, which is carrying out repression and imposes a blockade and restrictions on all sections of the Sahrawi people, seizes their land and property, plunders their natural resources, and expels journalists and international observers. And as violence continues to destroy Haiti, 27,500 people have been displaced in less than a week due to armed gangs attacks in the Center Department, according to the International Organization for Migration, IOM. Ms. Hodjarfi reports.
The UN agency said in its latest report that these displacements are the result of violence caused by armed attacks since July 3, 2025, in Sarazin, located in the municipality of Mirbale. A total of 6,700 households have been forced to flee their homes in the attacked areas and in the neighboring municipality of Las Cahoba. According to the IOM, most of the new displaced persons have found refuge with host families or in 7 spontaneous sites newly created following these incidents. More than 1.3 million people have been displaced since gang violence erupted in this Caribbean country of approximately 12 million inhabitants. According to the IOM, the new population movement reflects a continuing deterioration in the security situation in the Central Department, which was once a relatively calm area. These displacements come at a time when severe underfunding continues to hamper the humanitarian response. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council is set to vote tomorrow on a draft resolution renewing the mandate of the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, BINUH, for 6.5 months until January 31st, 2026. In his latest report on BINUH, published on June 27th, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres recommended extending the mission's mandate for an additional year with the logistical and security resources necessary to operate in the current context.
With more than 1.6 million Afghans returning home from Iran and Pakistan so far this year, the UN Refugee Agency has warned that the scale and intensity of the mass returns are creating a humanitarian emergency in a country already gripped by poverty, drought and insecurity. More in this report by Jamil Salmani.
This week, UNHCR's representative in Afghanistan, Arafat Jamal, described the situation as evolving and chaotic, as he urged countries in the region and the wider international community to urgently commit resources, show restraint and coordinate their efforts to avoid further destabilization of Afghanistan and the region.
We are calling for restraint, for resources, for dialogue, and for international cooperation to stem an evolving chaotic situation and to foster a more stable outcome for all of us. Since the spring of this year, first Pakistan, then Iran, and now possibly others such as Tajikistan, are fomenting the mass return of Afghan refugees. Some people are moving in a voluntary fashion, but others are not. Of concern to us is the scale, the intensity, and the manner in which returns are occurring. In terms of the scale, over 1.6 million Afghans have returned from both Pakistan and Iran this year alone. The intensity is also of concern. At the Iran-Afghanistan border in Islam Kala, we are seeing peaks of over 40,000 people a day. And on the 4th of July, we actually saw 50,000 people coming across that borders.
He raised particular concern about the fate of women and girls who arrive in a country where their fundamental rights are severely restricted. Despite the strained resources, Jamal said the agency is still providing emergency food and water, shelter and transportation at reception centers and working with partners such as UNICEF to address the needs of unaccompanied children, about 400 of whom were reportedly deported from Iran in just over 2 weeks.
US President Donald Trump has announced that he's imposing tariffs of 30% against the European Union and Mexico starting from August 1st, a move that could cause massive upheaval between the United States and two of its biggest trade partners. Trump detailed the planned tariffs in letters posted to his social media account. In his letter to Mexico's leader, President Claudia Sheinbaum, Trump acknowledged that the country has been helpful in stemming the flow of undocumented migrants and fentanyl into the United States. He said the country has not done enough to stop North America from turning into what he called a narco-trafficking playground. Trump added that Mexico has been helping him secure the border, but what Mexico has done is not enough. Meanwhile, in his letter to the European Union, President Trump said that the US trade deficit was a national security threat. He stressed that the relationship between the US and the EU has been, unfortunately, far from reciprocal. The letters come into the midst of an on-and-off Trump threat to impose tariffs on countries and right an imbalance in trade. The 24th edition, back to national news, the 24th edition of the International Tourism and Travel Fair, CTEF, has kicked off here in Algiers with 200 exhibitors representing 27 countries and 38 startups attending. Addressing the edition held under the theme Travel to the Heart of Algeria and Enjoy Authentic Tourism and a 1,000-years-old civilization, the Minister of Tourism and Handicraft, Mrs. Mudahi, said that the event was a real opportunity to strengthen partnership, promote the exchange of expertise and encourage investment in a sector that has now become a real lever for economic development. The minister stressed that Algeria was working in accordance with the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboun's vision to diversify its economy and promote sustainable development models in which tourism plays a key role, referring to the Action Plan 2024 to 2030, aimed at promoting all of our country's tourist assets, developing tourism, including the domestic one. That's it for today's news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a program in which we'll let you discover or know more about the Algerian heritage, to include history,